It was the first day of my transferring to a new school. On that day, I saw that charming fake young master, William. There were always a lot of people around him, boys and girls alike, those who liked him and those who liked him even more. It seemed that being disliked was not an attribute of him. Among them, the ones who chased after him most fervently were Matthew, his childhood friend, and Daniel, the school bully. The two of them took turns flattering that young man named William. William was smiling, with his curved eyes on his fair face. Along with his dimples, he looked really lively and cute. Noticing my gaze fixed on William, there was a tall and gloomy boy sitting in the last row. Even though he was in the sunlight, he seemed to have all his vitality drained out. No one cared about his emotions, but I knew his name. It was Michael. He had grown up in an orphanage with poor conditions since he was a child. He was like a wild grass in spring, being blown by the wind, and just like that, he grew up. He entered the school and always came first in exams. Everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. But then, he was identified as the biological son of the Kuang family who was swapped away all those years ago. Precious pearls were stolen, fakes were mixed in, and the imposter was spoiled into a bright young master. A weed can never turn into a flower. Michael can never become William. He's the charming one who's full of life, with a knack for making people laugh or getting angry. His parents love him, and his fiancée loves him. Even the school bully who once showed him kindness at school likes him, while he's the stupid and clumsy one that everyone dislikes. No one has ever liked him. He's back. Yet it seems like he's not really back. He never had a home before. Now, he still doesn't have a home. They look at him with cold words, thinking he's vulgar, unreasonable, and doesn't understand the ways of the world. Even when William openly frames him, as long as his eyes turn slightly red, they'll accuse him, saying, "Why does William only pick on you and not others? If you didn't do it, why would he say it was you?" William has been raised by our side since he was a kid. We know his temper and character best. Michael, don't try to argue. Even the people he initially thought were his friends would just look at him with furrowed brows. If anything happens to William, I won't let you get away with it. William, William, William. Everyone only had William in their eyes. He was only 16 when he first came back home. He was kind to everyone, but the family he had expected to love him didn't. On his first birthday, no one gave him a birthday greeting. Not to mention William said he wanted to eat cake. On that day, the Kuang family bought more than a dozen flavors and sent them to the house. William came over with a smile, holding the cake in front of him. He smiled as if there was not a hint of malice. Although my birthday is still half a year away, it doesn't matter. Have some birthday cake. If Big Brother likes it, it's okay to have one every day. His smile was like a candy wrapped with poison. In full view of everyone, he didn't take it. He was allergic to mangoes. Not to mention the cake William gave him was exactly a mango cake. He turned around and went upstairs, shutting out the noise behind him. But then he heard Matthew curse, "Ungrateful wretch," and his parents didn't refute. After that, his birthdays were like forgotten fallen leaves. They were rolled and rolled by the wind, and then forgotten in some unknown distant place. He felt like an outsider staying in the house on a borrowed basis. Besides, William was the master of the house. William didn't like Michael, and Michael didn't know why. Clearly, everything of his no longer belonged to him. He didn't understand why William harbored such great malice towards him. He tried to change something, but he couldn't change anything. He used to be a top student at school. Everyone spoke of him with admiration. But all William did was say meekly, "Michael was... well, never mind. He probably just doesn't like me, I guess." He wasn't on purpose. Some people just have this kind of inexplicable ability. Even though he didn't say anything, he made people feel like he was extremely wronged. So many people liked William. With just one spit from each of them, Michael was stuck in the quagmire. I later read the book he wrote. It recorded this incident and used a sentence, "My feet were stuck in the mud, unable to walk, leaving me no choice but to crawl on my knees towards the future." During the lunch break, William dragged me to have a few words. It's like he can't live without others' attention. His sycophantic and ingratiating look made me a bit annoyed. But who knew that when I turned around, Michael was nowhere to be seen. My heart skipped a beat. Despite my body that gasped for breath with every step, I ran towards the rooftop with all my might. On the edge of the rooftop, which was about half a person's height. Michael spread his arms, as if embracing the wind. His loose school uniform billowed behind him. It was as if it had given wings to the skinny boy. He heard the rooftop door being slammed open, but he didn't turn around. I reached out and locked the rooftop door. Before I could say anything, my chest, due to the intense exercise, was like a leaky bellows. I was gasping loudly and with great difficulty. Cough, cough, cough. On the quiet rooftop, only the howling wind and my violent coughing could be heard. The intense discomfort made my eyes red and my nose sore. Michael turned around, facing me, with his back to the 6-story height and the terrified teachers and students below. Are you out of your mind? I coughed twice and nodded. I was born weak. I've got all sorts of ailments. Could kick the bucket any time. The air fell silent for a moment. Only the wind whistled sharply in the air. After a long while, Michael finally spoke up. Then what are you running for? Came to find you. The guy in mid-air was taken aback. Find me? I leaned against the wall, struggling to prop myself up on my weak legs and stand up. Then I let go of the wall and took a few steps towards Michael. Michael, I want to be friends with you. Maybe you don't know me yet, and you've never heard of someone named Samuel. You have no idea that there's someone who gets all your vulnerabilities and loneliness, who's come all the way through the long years, right to your side, just to tell you one thing. Michael, you're not alone. Michael stood on the edge of the rooftop, looking down at me. His eyes were filled with such obvious shock. Behind him, the rooftop door was being banged loudly by the teacher, shouting, "Student, stay calm," and trying to persuade him in a disorganized way. The person on the edge of the rooftop couldn't help but laugh. First, he raised his eyebrows and chuckled, then burst into a muffled laugh, and finally, he simply started cursing sarcastically. Are you out of your mind? Are you blind? Can't you see what the situation is right now? I'm about to jump off the building, and you're telling me you want to be friends with me? Is this the right time to make friends? The wind on the rooftop was so strong that it made me dizzy. My dizzy head somehow felt a bit feverish. I swayed a bit, and with some difficulty, I said, Michael, I'm a little dizzy. I think I have a fever. He frowned, glanced at the rooftop door that I had locked, and then looked at the teachers and students below. Are you annoying or what? Before he could finish, I fainted, falling headfirst. He was startled, and his voice went up a notch. Hey, what are you pretending for? Hey, you there, he shouted several times but got no response. Finally, in a fit of anger, he simply jumped down from the rooftop. He turned me over and was just about to slap me a couple of times. Then he saw that my head had hit the concrete floor and was bleeding. In the end, accepting his fate but still fuming, he hoisted me up, unlocked the door, and rushed towards the school infirmary. No one believed Michael could die, or perhaps, even if he did, it wouldn't stir up the slightest ripple. But I'm different. I'm the only son of the one family, the future helmsman of the one family group. Even though I was born with health issues and need money to keep myself alive, everyone treats me like a precious porcelain doll on a high pedestal. Only I know that this porcelain doll is trapped in the clay, and even its soul is empty. I can't grow wings, and I can't fly to the wilderness. When I woke up again, I was already lying in the exclusive VIP ward of a private hospital. Michael was sitting right next to me. His eyes were looking out of the window, and he was munching on an apple he'd peeled for me. Why did you come to save me? Did the bodhisattva on the altar have a sudden bout of kindness? I blinked my eyes. I didn't pay any attention to his sarcastic and snide remarks. Michael, I'm thirsty. He spun around and stared at me. Then he went to pour a glass of warm water, muttering angrily, "What a weak body. Just a bit of wind on the rooftop and you get a fever. You, trying to be a hero and save people? If I hadn't come down early, you'd have burned up even before I jumped." His words were like knives, coming out in a nagging stream. I listened obediently and then reached out to hold his hand. Michael, don't be scared. He seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He snorted and laughed twice. Me, scared? Do I look scared? But then, he pressed his lips tightly together and his eyes reddened. 18-year-old Michael was still a stubborn, proud, scared yet brave young boy. Far from the gloomy and crazy tough guy I got to know later. He didn't pull his hand away from mine and sat down beside my bed. Why do you have to be friends with me? Do you pity me? I shook my head. It wasn't me who wanted to be friends with Michael. Or perhaps more precisely, not the 18-year-old me. It was me at 28, bored with life. Whenever I was desperate about my deteriorating body, I'd flip through Michael's autobiography. There wasn't even a title on the book cover, just the word Michael scrawled in messy handwriting. It was both the title and his name. He wrote about everything that happened after he got home, including today's suicide jump. Without me, no one came to save him. He jumped off the building. He didn't die, but broke both his legs. He was stuck in the mud, crawling on his knees, but he was unyielding. It was written like this in the book. Even if I lose my legs, I can fly further than those who are physically intact. He got into a top-notch university with the best grades. After graduation, he started a company, published books, traveled the world, went skydiving, bungee jumping, and fought against the world. We never met, but I'd known him from the book for a long time. He was a splash of vivid color in my dull life. I thought, if I had appeared in his youth, I surely wouldn't have let the rose become imperfect, even if the imperfection made it more beautiful. I took an apple and placed it in Michael's palm. No reason. I just simply want to be friends with you. If I have to come up with a reason, you're good looking. Does that count as one? Michael lowered his head, took a bite of the apple, and muttered in silence. What kind of reason is that? I looked at him and reminded. The apple was meant for you to peel for me. You've already eaten the last one. Michael instantly got ruffled, his face turning red. Got it. It's just an apple. I'll peel another one. Such a hassle. He didn't mean what he said. He was adorably awkward. Ever since Michael saved me, my parents met him on purpose. They also told him to take good care of me as my classmate. He sat there obediently, his ears red. He promised seriously, I will definitely take good care of Samuel. Then he looked up and met my smiling eyes. He shifted his gaze awkwardly. After a while, he turned to look at me again. Samuel, we're friends now. You might not believe it, but the afternoon sun outside the window was perfect, shining through the glass onto his shoulders. Some chubby birds were startled by the wind and flew up in the air, frolicking. Michael turned his head to look at me, his eyes earnest. Samuel, you're my first friend, I said with a smile. It's my honor. We've been good friends for ages, even before you knew me. When I was a kid, I was in really poor health. The villa had to be disinfected every day, and the medical staff who came in to take care of me couldn't make direct contact with me. Felt more like a hospital than my home. It was empty, lacking any sign of life. One year on my birthday, Mom gave me a preserved flower. She stroked my head and held me on her lap, looking at me with a big smile in her eyes. What? Don't you like this gift? This is the most beautiful one in Mom's garden, especially for my little treasure. At 5 years old, I stared at the bright red rose in the glass cover. The thorns on the stem had been trimmed off, leaving only a brown scar. I suddenly felt a bit sad and stared at it blankly. It must hurt a lot without its thorns, right? Mom was taken aback. She replied to me, No, baby, it's just a rose. I looked up at her. Then will it be lonely, being locked up in there all alone? Just like me. Mom's eyes widened in a daze, and then tears welled up in her eyes in an instant. My beautiful mom. She cried loudly that day. I was only 5 years old then, not really understanding much, but I still lived in that villa. And just like that, I grew up day by day. It seemed I had everything, countless money, and power that others could only dream of. Yet it also seemed I had nothing. There was nothing around me, not even a healthy body. Maybe this seems a bit melodramatic, but I really couldn't muster the slightest bit of interest in this world, until I saw the words on the cover of his autobiography. My life should be a wilderness, not a track. Suddenly, I felt an intense curiosity about a stranger. I wondered what kind of life such a statement represented. But when I opened the book, all I saw was a rose, a broken rose, whose thorns were cut off at the age of 18. Such a tragic, desolate, and imperfect rose full of the spirit of resistance. I glanced at the preserved flower on the table. It was like my rose. The Kuang family's business can be described in 4 words as far as our family is concerned. It's not worth mentioning. Even Matthew and Daniel, if I hadn't transferred to this school on my own initiative. Not to mention them, even their father isn't worthy of meeting me. After resting at home for 2 days, I came to school again. As soon as class was over, William came over on his own, blinking his big eyes at me. Samuel, are you over your illness? I haven't seen you for days. I was so worried about you. Matthew and Daniel were following behind him, one on each side. They looked at me impatiently and warily. I looked up casually. Is that so? William nodded right away. Really? You just transferred here and you were kind enough to save my brother, and then got sick. I really feel guilty. How about this? Let me take care of you during this time, okay? His big eyes were full of expectation as he looked at me. When Matthew heard this, he was the first one who couldn't sit still. What do you mean by you taking care of him? He's an adult. Can't he take care of himself? You're not in good health either. Why should you thank him on Michael's behalf? What on earth is Michael? William looked kind. How can you say that? Xiao Yi is my brother. Samuel saved him, and I should be grateful. Daniel chimed in. William, you're just too kind. William's face turned slightly red. No, it's all I should do. Samuel, don't take it to heart. Matthew is just a bit brusque in his words. He doesn't mean to target you. Matthew furrowed his brows. What are you explaining so much for? I kept watching the three of them putting on this deep brotherly love act for me. Only after they were done did I speak up. No need. I don't need strangers to look after me. Even if I did, Michael alone would be enough. I didn't even say anything too harsh. Yet there was William, with red-rimmed eyes, looking like he was about to cry. Sorry, I guess I was being too presumptuous. After saying that, he turned around and ran outside, looking all pitiful, as if I'd done something heinously wrong. Matthew quickly chased after him. How can you talk to William like that? Don't be ungrateful. Daniel, the school bully, furrowed his brows and glared at me. I let out a light laugh. Not to mention I didn't say anything harsh. Even if I did, what could you do? Hit me? Dare you? Daniel, seething with rage, grabbed my collar, ready to lash out. You, Daniel! I didn't even struggle, but Michael, who was standing outside the door, rushed in and grabbed Daniel's hand. You try touching Samuel. Daniel didn't move. I lifted my eyelids to look at him. Daniel, you're not a kid at 18. It's time you grew up. Lay a finger on me today, and I'll make your dad kneel in front of me tomorrow. Don't believe me? Well, give it a shot. Daniel was so angry that his eyes turned red, his chest heaving violently. But in the end, Daniel didn't throw a punch at me. Compared to brute force, people with weaknesses are easier to control. I'm pretty good at my studies, and Michael is even better. Due to my health condition, I need to avoid things that are too mentally exhausting. After all, I don't really need grades to prove myself. Our daily routine is to do exercises, read books, and discuss different ways to solve problems. Michael's viewpoints always strike me as novel. I seem to see the rudiment of the 28-year-old Michael, but he wasn't that sharp or extreme. He seemed to be doing okay in every way, but I knew the crack in his family, so to speak, was still spreading infinitely within him. I didn't know how the 28-year-old Michael reborn from despair, but I knew I had to pull the 18-year-old Michael out of the quagmire. I wasn't in good health. Sometimes, just opening the window and getting a bit of wind would make me catch a cold and be sick for 2 or 3 days. Michael was completely different. He was like a wild weed, swaying in the wind yet firmly rooted, as if he had an endless supply of vitality. Even my mom noticed and said, Michael is a nice kid. He makes you look more energetic. I lowered my head, turned a page of the book, and gave a soft laugh. Yeah, he is really nice. I glanced out of the window at the sunny sky. Michael was late today. In the past month, he seemed to have a little secret, but I didn't ask, and he didn't say either. Every day when he came to see me, he always looked exhausted. Occasionally, when we met the next day, he had bruises on him. First, I didn't notice. It wasn't until during a PE class that Daniel's ball accidentally came flying towards me. Michael had been leaning against the tree next to me, chatting and laughing with me. The next second, we saw the ball coming at us hard. Michael quickly turned and pulled me into his arms. We were really close. His heart was beating fast, and it made my heavy heart start racing too. Oof! He let out a muffled groan. Michael, are you okay? He gritted his teeth and replied, I'm fine. He let go of me, turned around, walked up to Daniel, and grabbed Daniel's collar. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Daniel just shrugged and laughed, raising his hands. Sorry, my hand slipped. Ever since I threatened Daniel last time, there seemed to be some distance between him and William. Matthew got closer to William, and then Daniel started looking for trouble with me everywhere. First, he just tested the waters carefully. Seeing that I didn't react, he started to go further, just like he used to do to Michael. I lowered my eyes and didn't say anything, just looking at Michael. Slipped my ass. His breath grew heavy. He raised his fist and smashed it into Daniel's face. Daniel winced in pain. Ugh! The blow was so hard that Daniel's face instantly turned blue in one spot. Michael, the hell you dare to hit me? Dare to touch Samuel? I'll beat the crap out of you. Daniel was about to charge forward, but was held back by the classmates behind him. Then he saw the figures of Matthew and William in the distance. Forgot who was the first to talk to you when you just got back to the Kuang family. Michael ignored him, turned to look at me, and warned, stay away. I didn't say a word. He reached out a bit helplessly and touched my head. Samuel, be good. I lowered my eyes and took 2 steps back. Daniel, seeing that Michael ignored him, got even angrier. Michael, who the hell do you think you are? Compared with William, you're not even worth a hair of his. Seeing that I was at a distance, Michael raised his middle finger at him. Daniel was furious and shook off the hand of the classmate beside him. You think you're so great just because you're with the eldest son of the one family? He just treats you like a free dog that comes running whenever he calls. Michael's eyes instantly turned sharp. Say that again, Daniel provocatively repeated, saying you're Samuel's dog. The next second, Michael's fist landed on Daniel's face. One on the left, one on the right, neatly matched. The two got into a fight on the basketball court. Some of the classmates nearby tried to dissuade them. Some tried to pull them apart. Only I, looking at Michael, who was evenly matched or even at a slight disadvantage, slightly curled the corners of my lips. I don't like the inferiority and lifelessness in 18-year-old Michael. He should be confident, sharp, and ambitious. And all of this requires confidence. The Kuang family can't give it to him, but I can. I'll be his weakness, and I'll also be his sturdy shield. Be a competent gardener, quietly guarding my precious rose to bloom. The two fought fiercely. When my bodyguard arrived, Michael could barely hold Daniel down. Go easy, just break one of his legs, I softly instructed, and the bodyguard nodded in agreement. So, Michael got injured, and Daniel broke a leg. In the school infirmary, Michael took off his shirt and sat on the bed. His body was black and blue. There were also some old injuries. They'd heal and then get hurt again. My fair and slender fingertips pressed on them, overlapping with the blue and purple bruises. Michael hissed, then looked up and grabbed my hand. Just smear some medicine on it. It's not that painful. Really? Expressionless, I reached out and pressed on the wound beside his lips. Ouch! It hurts. Hurts. Thought you said it didn't hurt? He grinned at me, grimacing in pain. This part hurts. I ignored him and took the medicated liquid to smear on his back. There were only the two of us in the room. No one spoke, and even the air was quiet. After a long while, he spoke in a very soft voice. Samuel, don't be mad, okay? Seeing that I still didn't say anything, he cautiously looked back at me. His voice was a bit low. Last time, Daniel grabbed your collar, but I couldn't beat him before. I didn't get myself hurt on purpose. I'm not afraid of being bullied myself. I'm afraid you'll be bullied. I stopped what I was doing and looked into his eyes. Michael, I'm not mad. A flash of joy crossed his eyes. I reached out and ruffled his hair. I'll never be mad at you. So, no matter what you do, you don't have to be so cautious around me. You looked so cool when you stepped in front of me to protect me. His ears instantly turned so red they seemed to be bleeding. With his watery eyes and messy hair, he looked like an obedient puppy. Puppy Rose? That's kind of interesting. That night, Michael went back to the Kuang family. It was the next day when I got the news that Michael had been beaten and taken to the Lin family to apologize. My eyes instantly turned cold. Get the car ready and gather some men. A wave of intense annoyance washed over my fragile body. I coughed softly and stood up. My parents at the dining table were both taken aback. "What happened to that boy, Michael?" As I put on my coat to calm myself down, I explained briefly and concisely. "I told the bodyguard to break the guy's legs. My mom usually seems delicate and gentle." Hearing this, she slapped her chopsticks down on the table. "Who did you tell?" "Daniel." My mom looked at my dad and said, "You figure it out." My dad didn't say anything. He just nodded with a solemn face. It wasn't until I reached the door that he said, "You're not in good health. Don't get too worked up. Just bring him back." I didn't say a word. I wasn't sure if I could stay calm when I saw Michael. Time went back to 8 p.m. The previous night, Michael got home, but as soon as he entered the house, he saw William sitting on the sofa, crying. Matthew was beside him, softly comforting him. His father, Lucas, and mother, Sophia, were also nearby, asking what was wrong. "Brother beat up Daniel at school today. He knew Daniel was my friend and that his father had a cooperation with Dad, yet he still hit him so hard. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. It's my fault for not watching over brother. I let him do such an out-of-line thing." As soon as he finished speaking, Lucas immediately raised his voice. "What? Michael beat up Daniel?" The Kuang family's business hasn't been going well recently. Even the business deal with Daniel's family was brokered by Daniel out of consideration for William. Just thinking that the cooperation might fall through, Lucas gritted his teeth in hatred. "That little rascal. I knew he was trouble. When he comes back, I'll give him a good beating." But when he turned around, he saw Michael entering the door. He grabbed the glass on the table and hurled it straight at Michael, who was coming in. "You good for nothing." Michael frowned and his eyes swept over the sobbing William. Feeling nothing but annoyance, he turned to open the door and leave, but Lucas reached out and grabbed him. "Where do you think you're going? All you do is cause trouble every day. I should never have let you come back in the first place." The anger that had been pent up in Michael's heart for a long time seemed to explode in his mind in an instant. He shook off Lucas's hand and stared at him intently. "You shouldn't have let me come back. You shouldn't have given birth to me." Lucas flew into a rage. "How dare you talk to me like that?" A sharp pain seemed to penetrate his bones. His gaze, like a knife, slowly scanned every detail of the room and the different expressions of everyone. It felt as if his chest had been cut open, and the knives of Ling Chi were slicing across his heart one by one. In the end, it all turned into his deep-seated hatred. "Do you think I wanted to come back? If I hadn't come back, at least I could still have the illusion of a home, the illusion that there was a place where someone would love me. But now, the curtain has been pulled back. My parents have become someone else's parents. They don't love me. They treat me like an enemy. You all think I'm stupid and not as likable as William. I admit it, but why doesn't anyone ever think that those lives should have been mine? I'm not being unfair. I've never been jealous. I wouldn't even mind if a stranger became my brother, but I loathe my parents. They gave birth to me, yet they don't love me, because I was beaten and insulted by his admirers just because he said I didn't like him, and I survived all that." He tilted his head up, looking at every murderer present. "But when there were guests that day, you introduced me as a child from a friend's family? How ridiculous. I'm a child from a friend's family." At that moment, his smile looked more like he was crying, but no one cared. He laid his heart bare for others to see. After they took a look, like passers-by, they left 2 words: squeamish. When I rushed into the Lin family with people, Michael was unconscious, lying on the ground. Blood was spreading from under his leg. My mind went blank with a buzz. I moved my lips slightly and whispered his name. "Michael." "Mr." Lin stepped forward, and when he saw me, he immediately greeted me obsequiously. "Samuel." He was pushed away roughly by the bodyguard beside me. At that moment, all I could hear in my ears was my own heavy breathing. All I could see in my eyes was Michael and his bleeding leg. "To the hospital." Samuel's lips moved twice, but because his body was trembling, he could barely make a sound. The bodyguard didn't catch it clearly and confirmed again. "Young master, to the hospital." Samuel almost shouted, "To the hospital." Along with these words, blood spurted out of his mouth. The bodyguards were startled. Then they rushed Samuel and the unconscious Michael to the hospital urgently. Outside the operating room, his father's friend was the director of this hospital. "Uncle, please save his leg." The doctor sighed. "I'll do my best. You're not in good shape. Go rest first." The light in the operating room came on, and Samuel, his spirit relaxed, and he passed out. He was half-conscious in a dream. One moment, it was 28-year-old Michael saying he was crawling on his knees. The next moment, it was 18-year-old Michael, looking at him with red eyes. Samuel, it hurts so much. They were on either side, getting farther and farther away from each other. Samuel wanted to grab both of them, but he couldn't catch either. Finally, I gritted my teeth and ran towards the 28-year-old Michael. I passed through the darkness and saw the light again. With great effort, I grabbed his hand. Michael, don't leave me. But he raised his eyebrows and pushed me away. He said, the 28-year-old Michael doesn't need Samuel. I was shocked all over, and my hand naturally let go. His hand pressed on my chest. His eyes were gentle, and his tone was tinged with envy. Samuel, thank you for coming into his 18-year-old life. The hand on my chest exerted a little force, and my body suddenly dropped down, crashing into a pure white world. He stood above looking at me, laughing freely. Finally, he waved at me. It was as if he was saying goodbye to me. When I woke up again, I stared at the person in the opposite bed, a bit slow to react. His face was badly beaten, and his hands were full of bandages. His 2 legs were in casts, making him look like a doll. Hi! He stretched out his only intact hand and greeted me. My eyes instantly turned red. Michael! I tried to get up, but he stopped me. Don't move. The needle is still in. We were on opposite sides. Both of us were pinned down by the needles, unable to move. Samuel, you've saved me twice. His face was covered with scars, yet he looked at me with a smile. I was gonna peel you an apple to thank you, but look, I only have one hand left now. My eyes landed on his legs, and my lips trembled. Does it hurt? He nodded. It does. It really hurts. Michael straightened his head and looked up at the ceiling. He murmured, as if talking about someone else's story. William told them about me hitting Daniel. They were afraid it would delay the cooperation, so they personally escorted me to the Lin family. They said, to let them do as they pleased. Daniel came out and said that if I knelt down and begged for mercy, he'd let me go. Ridiculous. Do you think I'm the type to beg him? So what if it's just 2 broken legs? I'm not even afraid of death, let alone this. His tone was light, but there were tears streaming down from the corner of his eyes, flowing into his temples and along his sideburns. Samuel, do you think there really is such a thing as love without expecting anything in return in this world? If there is, why haven't I seen it? Why has no one ever come to love me? He turned his face and looked at me calmly. Even you, who are you looking at through me? Beneath the calm lake surface, it was as if a dangerous beast was hiding, as if it could burst out of the water at any moment and devour me. Tears rolled down from the corners of his eyes and landed on the pillow. I forced a smile that looked even uglier than crying. Unfortunately, that person just abandoned me. Michael pressed his lips tightly together, and his voice sounded like he was crying. Why? I pulled out the needle and walked towards Michael barefoot. I lowered my head and touched his forehead with mine. Our eyes met, letting him see everything about me. A tear fell and moistened his dry lips, because he found that there was someone more important than him in my heart. The scalding temperature was transmitted to him through our foreheads. His eyelashes were trembling, and his voice was shaking too. Is that person me? I sniffed and bent down to touch him. Our breaths intertwined, and the voice was very soft, like a secret between us. It's you. His dim eyes suddenly lit up like lamps in the darkness, bright and dazzling. Something seemed to have subtly changed in my relationship with Michael, and yet it also seemed like nothing had changed. He became more and more cheerful. Just occasionally, he's extra clingy. Samuel, I want to eat an apple. Samuel, I'm thirsty. I want to drink some water. Seeing that I didn't move, he pitifully wheeled his wheelchair and showed me his leg in a cast. I glanced at him and tapped his healthy head. Hurry up and do the problems. He blinked his eyes and hooked his finger onto the corner of my clothes. I already know them all. I don't need to write anymore. Seeing his pitiful look and thinking about his nearly perfect grades. All right, I'll go get them for you. He was sitting in the living room while I was standing in the kitchen. His eyes were constantly catching sight of me. This made me feel like a butterfly, attracted by a rose and surrounded by it. I chuckled and turned to look at the puppy. Like guy with blinking eyes who couldn't move. I brought the water to his lips. Aren't you going to ask me how the Kuang family is? The puppy was stunned for a moment and raised his wet eyes. Samuel, what should I do? I'm homeless. Will you be nice to me? Always. The insecure puppy was like a stray dog just picked up from the street. He cautiously probed your love. I reached out and ruffled his soft hair. Yes, I'll always be good to you. He grinned, looking like a fool. He never asked about the Kuang family again. But just because he didn't care and wanted to forget everything didn't mean I'd let them off so easily. While he was reading, I walked outside. Has Daniel been sent to the hospital? The bodyguard nodded, then said with some hesitation, Young master, do we really have to wait until his leg heals and beat him up again? And his arm. Michael's leg wasn't seriously injured, but it needed proper care. But I still couldn't forget the scene of a pool of blood beneath him when I went to find him that day. I coughed softly twice. My eyes were icy cold. The day Michael got hurt, I spat out blood. My parents were furious. Even the old master who was on vacation in Europe was alerted. After Michael and I were discharged from the hospital, even before we could ask, news came that the Kuang family, the Lin family, and the Jiang family had gone bankrupt. Daniel had both his arm and leg broken and couldn't even move in the hospital. After the Jiang family went bankrupt, Matthew and William had a huge argument. Matthew thought William had ruined him, and the two parted on bad terms. I sneered. I thought they were so in love. The Kuang family had no way to turn things around, and Lucas wanted William to attach himself to a big shot in the circle. William went, but after it was done, he turned his back on them. Before leaving, he said, You were so cruel to your own son. Do you think you'd be more sincere to me than to him? It's just because I can bring more benefits. It's all about exploitation. Lucas was so angry that he fainted on the spot. Sophia was also crying uncontrollably. Lucas and Sophia had nowhere to live, so they had to go to a place in the suburbs that provided relief to displaced people. Coincidentally, that place was the orphanage where Michael had once lived. After we met, the one family paid to move the orphanage to a better location. The old yard was left empty and became the current relief station. I once went to see the room where Michael had lived. It was so tiny, with only a window as small as a palm. Under the window was a shabby little desk. I could even imagine it. Little Michael, looking up with eyes full of longing, gazing out of the window, dreaming of the love from his parents. Until all of this was shattered. The inferiority wrapped in pride, like poison with a sugar coating. Eventually, he gave up and let himself sink into the abyss. I can't imagine how much he had to go through after being hurt but not freed, before he could reshape himself in the fire. The more I learned, the more I felt sorry for him. A few days before the exam, the whole family was on high alert. Michael was sitting in a wheelchair, watching me being surrounded by my parents. You've just recovered not long ago. Maybe we should rest for another year and go next year. Samuel, your dad is right. Our family doesn't really need a degree that much. My dad, who graduated from Oxford, nodded in agreement. He gave me a bit of a headache. Mom, Dad, I just don't feel well physically. It's just an exam. I won't break. They didn't say anything more, but the way they looked at me made me a bit overwhelmed. I knew the last episode of Spitting Blood still scared them. I turned my head towards Michael with a bit of helplessness. He was sitting alone in the wheelchair. The sunlight from outside the window fell on his shoulders and knees. Sitting right in the sunlight, yet all alone, as if surrounded by loneliness. I stepped forward a couple of paces and reached out to hold his fingertips. My somewhat cool hand intertwined with his burning hot one. I took a deep breath and turned to look at my parents. I know you guys are really worried about me, but life is short, and who knows if we'll have all the time in the world. I just want to do what I want to do and love what I love. In this life, we should live to the fullest. My mom couldn't hold back the tears welling up in her eyes. My dad glanced at Michael and let out a sigh. You've grown up. Do what you want. The day of the exam didn't go smoothly. Before entering the door, there were a middle-aged man and woman who looked like homeless people. They rushed over desperately and hugged Michael's wheelchair tightly, shouting, "He's my son. He's ungrateful. He makes money off men but doesn't support his parents. Such an unfilial child doesn't deserve to take the exam." They were like two desperate mad dogs, powerless to resist life. They could only bare their fangs and turn their eyes to those they considered weaker. Michael's clothes were wrinkled from being pulled, and he held onto the armrests of the wheelchair unsteadily. The security guards were trying to pull Lucas and Sophia away. While they were pulling at him, in full view of everyone, it should have been miserable and embarrassing, but he just stared at them steadily. After a long while, he finally spoke. "You all saw with your own eyes that someone else broke my legs. Just as you said, I even have to be supported by a man now. What do you get from humiliating me like this?" People around were whispering, and some security guards had already rushed out to call the police. Lucas's eyes were red, and his hand gripping Michael's leg was so hard that his knuckles turned white. His eyes were full of crazy paranoia. "Since you've won Samuel's favor, could you please put in a good word for me? Ask him to give me just a little bit, even if it's just a tiny bit from between his fingers. I really can't go on like this." His hand was really forceful. Who had just come back from making a call nearby, felt a chill in my eyes and rushed over, about to kick him, but Michael grabbed my wrist tightly. His hand was so strong, as if he was clutching at a life-saving straw. "So, you came to me still because of money?" Sophia seemed to have had some kind of switch flipped. She dropped to her knees at Michael's feet, crying with snot and tears streaming down her face. "Xiaoye, Mom and Dad are sorry for you. Took us so many years to find you, but we were misled by that heartless William, and treated you so badly. You have to believe us, Mom and Dad. We really do love you." She was crying her eyes out, and Michael just stared at her steadily. I saw that the exam time was approaching. I was a bit anxious and stared fiercely at the two of them, but Michael suddenly laughed. He looked at a slightly stunned Sophia, nodded slightly and said, "Yeah, I believe you." I couldn't help frowning and tugged Michael's hand. "So? What do you want me to do?" Sophia was a bit slow to react to the question. Lucas, however, blurted out right away, "Give us money, a whole lot of money." "Sure," Michael agreed readily. He reached out and forcefully pulled Lucas's hand away. "I'll give you the money after I finish the exam." Then he grabbed me and left Lucas and Sophia, who had ecstatic expressions on their faces, and walked towards the exam entrance. "Michael," I couldn't help calling him. He looked up at me, his eyes as calm as a pool of water. I wanted to comfort him, but didn't know what to say at the moment. But he seemed to see through my thoughts and motioned me to look back. Lucas and Sophia were dancing with excitement, shouting for him to come out quickly. Michael sneered and said, "Look, I have parents waiting for me outside too." My heart suddenly ached with sadness. It was as if I'd been punched hard. I reached out and grabbed Michael's shoulder, making him look at me. "Your family is me. You're not allowed to look at those irrelevant people." This was the first time I was so tough with Michael, but he accepted it quite readily, as if he was used to it. He curled his lips. "Samuel, you're so bossy, but I like it." When we separated to go to the exam rooms, we walked with our backs to each other, but our ears turned red with shyness simultaneously. On the day the exam ended, Michael dragged me to a funeral supplies store. We spent 1,000 yuan and bought about 1,000 billion in fake money. Then, right in front of Lucas and Sophia, we burned it all up, handful by handful, in a basin. Lucas and Sophia were so angry that their eyes almost popped out, but they were held down by bodyguards and couldn't get up, kneeling on the ground. "All this is for you. Consider it money saved for you in the underworld in advance. Remember to go down and get it early. It would be a shame if it expired. After all, besides me, no one else will burn money for you." They were forced to kneel next to the ashes for 2 or 3 hours. The two of them were long past struggling, just kneeling on the ground with blank expressions. "Since you've made your choice, don't regret it. Unfortunately, some people will never understand this truth. As for William, in just a month or two, he has gone from being the young master he once was, to a promiscuous and self-debased plaything. I'm not in good health and can't stand the smell of cigarettes, so I can only sit in the car and watch this exciting scene from a distance." Before getting in the car, Michael raised his hand and sniffed the strong cigarette smell on himself. He took off his clothes in disgust and threw them on the ground. After opening the car door, he opened his arms towards me with bright eyes. "Samuel, give me a hug." I blushed. At my age, being called like this is really a bit embarrassing. "Don't call me like that randomly." I reached out to hold his back, but he hooked my neck. "Why not? I thought this was a family privilege. As he spoke, his breath hit my ear. It was a bit ticklish, and the tickle went straight to my heart. It is a privilege, but does William want to be my brother or my younger brother? I can be the younger brother during the day and the older brother at night. I was stunned. Why? He sat next to me and looked at me sideways. The younger brother is too enthusiastic. I'm afraid the older brother's body won't be able to take it at night. Samuel's face suddenly turned burning hot, and it didn't cool down throughout the journey. The day the grades came out, I was accompanying Michael to get his cast removed at the hospital. Hearing the grades said over the phone, I wasn't surprised at all. Michael was unexpectedly a bit nervous. Did I do really badly? Feeling somewhat happy, I rarely got the urge to tease him. Yeah, you did really poorly. Michael's eyes flickered. He didn't press further, but instead reached out to hug my waist and made me sit on his lap. I let out a yelp and instinctively braced myself against his chest. What's wrong? His eyes quivered slightly. When he looked up at me, he somehow seemed pitiful. I did so badly. I'm so useless. Will you dislike me? Finding it a bit funny, I pinched his face and said, we've been through so much together. How could I dislike you? Really? He widened his eyes pitifully, then suddenly reached out to grab the back of my neck. Then, Samuel, prove it to me. Prove what? The moment Michael was kissed, his hands were trembling. His breath was rapid and his body temperature was rising. His body was like being touched by scalding water, sending ripples through his whole body. Brother, be good. Michael, yeah, I'm here. When it was decided that they would go to be university together, only Michael was happy. Before dinner, my dad specifically called Michael by name and they went into the study. I didn't need to listen to know what it was about. Sure enough, soon Michael excitedly rolled his wheelchair to my side and whispered. Uncle Henry agreed. So happy to go to school with me. My grades in my previous life wouldn't have been enough, but the one family had plenty of money, and I could choose wherever I wanted. So much so that for the few points I was short this time, my dad just waved his hand and got me in. His eyes were deep as he stroked my hand. His voice was low, with the hoarseness of a voice changer. I'm extremely happy. I really want to have some quality time with you, bro. My ears turned red. I've only loved one person in 2 lifetimes, and I'm still a bit overwhelmed by this kind of thing. Do you like it, bro? Ever since that time in the hospital, it's like he flipped some kind of switch. He's been so bold and unrestrained. I always feel like he's a starving wolf. Do you like it when I call you bro? The more I dodge, the closer he gets. It seemed like he was about to push me onto the sofa. My dad coughed really loudly. Michael immediately sat up straight, so obedient it was scary. I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and got a blaming look from both him and my dad. That night, I was pushing Michael's wheelchair and taking a walk in the garden. Suddenly, he spoke up. Samuel, do you know what love is? I casually asked. What is it? He looked up at the starry sky. The stars were twinkling above his head, and the moon was beautiful tonight. Michael said, the essence of love is to be seen. He turned his head to look at me, starlight twinkling in his eyes. I've been wandering among billions of stars, and only your moonlight has fallen on me. Samuel, maybe it's selfish to say this, but I only want your eyes on me and no one else. He struggled to stand up from the wheelchair. Then he turned around and grabbed my hand. Samuel, I like you. Will you go out with me? His legs were weak, but his eyes were trembling as he stubbornly waited for my answer. What could I do? I had to reach out and put my arms around his waist, using myself to support my rose. Sure, who asked me to happen to like you too? The rose with its thorns removed was now safely held in my palm, running with me in the boundless wilderness of life, never to be separated.